Hmm. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Are you around? Assalam. Okay, shall we get started, inshallah? Inshallah, next time, probably we need to. I didn't get around to send the link to some of the friends because people mostly are busy on Fridays and all this stuff, so they need to be made aware of at least like a week or 2 weeks before. So maybe next time we will, inshallah, make sure that we disseminate probably uh, the post before, long before the day, inshallah, of the discussion. I think that this is better because on Fridays and after Juma, people tend to be very engaged. Okay, anyhow, we can get started. What do you think? It's okay. We can just get started. Inshallah. Thank you. Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Let me share this. Put a lot of stuff here. This is it. Presentation. Is this a big screen? Okay. Is it visible or not? Is it a problem with meeting? To the thing that I cannot really move. I think that Meet has a problem once you're in, and to make it a big screen, then you cannot really move around. Okay, it doesn't matter. Maybe probably I need to. Okay, so let me do it here. Do it full screen. Excellent. Let's see if now I think it should be okay. As for me, I need to. Let me see if I can move. Okay, good. So I can move through here. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. This is actually probably the second week since we resumed, our monthly discussion on Imam Ghazali, in particular his book al-MUNQIDH min al-ضلال. Yeah, and we've been reading it for quite a while now. Today we're going to discuss the ta'limiyah, ta'limism. Yeah. But to put everything into context, Imam al-Ghazali has been having a problem with traditionalism, taqleed and imitation, all this stuff. So this munqidh min al-dalal, in a way, is to go methodologically to prove that traditionalism is not something good, is not something praiseworthy. That's why, at some point he had a problem. He started asking and questioning everything around him. And traditionalism here, I mean, not the Quran or Sunnah in the full sense of the word, but rather the tradition left by also including ulama. So Imam al-Ghazali, in a way, tried to revive. That's why, his book is known as Ihya Ulumuddin. That is to say that Imam al-Ghazali was not really satisfied with traditionalism in general and just accepting everything by faith. No, Imam al-Ghazali wanted to go methodologically and study the tradition and see what appeals to what he calls al-jaliyat, al-ulum al-jaliyat, which is basically science-based knowledge, and also al-daruriyat, which is the rational aspect of knowledge, mathematics and logic and all this stuff. So in order for him to reach certainty, he needed, in a way, to investigate three trends that were so common in his days. And of course, we discuss the two others, which is the trend of al-mutakallimin, which he found praiseworthy, but not good enough. Not good enough in terms of bringing that certainty and in terms of solidifying Imam al-Ghazali's beliefs. So Imam al-Ghazali, and then he also after that, he investigated the philosophers, where he deemed some of their disciplines praiseworthy, such as logic and mathematics and science in general. But of course, he took on certain aspects of science, especially the epistemological underpinnings of science in general, and he criticized it. Not science per se, the philosophical and epistemological underpinnings. And we have discussed all of this. But the only problem that he had with the philosophers in general is metaphysics. It's where he deemed, and even in metaphysics, he discussed almost 20 issues related to their metaphysics. And of course, he's got a book on that, al-Falasifa, which is a very brilliant book. So this was meant to judge them. But this book, al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, is more of Imam al-Ghazali, in a way, discussing with us or showing us or sharing with us his findings related to his journey, his certainty journey, his pursuit of certainty and truth. Categorizing and mentioning the trends that were there at a time and investigating these trends, and now coming up to share with us. In addition to the fact that, of course, in addition to that, to his pursuit of certainty and truth, Imam al-Ghazali by nature, and even when you read his books, you could see that creativity in there. You could see that he tries all the time to stand out of the box, to stand out of the crowd, fighting traditionalism. Unlike what we sometimes heard that Imam Ghazali came to end critical thinking in the Ummah. On the contrary, Imam Ghazali was not faced by the then trends that were there. He said, oh yes, I'm pursuing truth, but I need to do my own research. I need to read. And if he was faced, he could have, well, easily, followed one of these trends. Of course, he ended up seeing that Sufism probably is the closest way to certainty. After reading, after investigating, after proving, after a through a priori knowledge, proving that Sufism is valid, it's some that we'll see, inshallah. But today, one of the trends that Imam Ghazali, of course, had a take on is the ta'limism and the ta'limiyya, madhab al-ta'lim. And some people call it al-batiniyya, the batinite, of course, which shows the aspect of secrecy and esotericism in their thought, in the practices. When we use the word batiniya, batinites, it gives you the impression of secrecy and hidden knowledge or something like that, and claiming basically the Quran and the Sunnah and the Akhbar were not to be understood through superficially, literally. That we have to go deep down. Or Quran and Sunnah have are symbols. They are mere symbols, and symbols which actually hide deep meanings, and these meanings cannot be accessible to everyone. This is where the idea of ta'limism comes. Only the imams, only the Imam al-Ma'soom, the infallible Imam, has access, to this secret or hidden esoteric knowledge. Not everyone can really understand it. So Imam al-Ghazali, fighting traditionalism, this is one of the traditions that existed at a time. Of course, we don't want to go historically to talk more about where ta'limism came and where the Batinites came, Batinites, where did it come actually? Because Imam Ghazali was not really concerned about that, even though, of course, in his book Fada'ih al-Batiniyya, which he was commissioned by al-Mustadhiri to write, a very wonderful book, enumerating, illuminating us on Batinites in general. Where if you go there, you will see Imam Ghazali sometimes mentioning some historical facts related to, some, if we may call it, mu'amara, conspiracy with the Fatimid Caliphate at the time. So because there was a problem between, of course, the then Fatimid Caliphate with al-Mustadhir. So the then Caliphate, Fatimid Caliphate was al-Mustansir in Egypt, and in Iraq, of course, you have al-Mustadhir Billah, who was then the Caliphate, the Seljuqi Caliphate at a time, during the, of course, one of the periods of the Abbasid Caliphates. They were claimed to be sent and to be supported by al-Mustansir in Egypt to, in a way, propagate, to disseminate the Aqidah in many parts of the Muslim world, including, of course, Iraq. And so to the extent that the trend became very apparent at a time, making people confused. And that confusion led Imam al-Ghazali to write that book, Fada'ih al-Batiniyah. There, if you go there, Imam al-Ghazali really talks in length on Batiniyah, mentioning everything about them, their history, where it came from, and also judging them, But here is not what Imam al-Ghazali tends to do, actually. That's why you will see when we start reading the text, he will just refer to his book. He will tell you, if you want to read more on that, more on my judgment, more on my view on Batinites, you go there. But here, Imam al-Ghazali is an objective investigator, I would say an objective researcher, trying with open, inquisitive mind, asking questions and, pursuing certainty. So as he did exactly with the with the Kalamists, and then with the philosophers, he's doing the same thing here with the Ta'limists. Okay. So now let's listen to what Imam al-Ghazali says about the Ta'limists. Of course, here we are going to take some points. We are going to read them, but every paragraph, or after every paragraph, we should come up with an idea of what Imam al-Ghazali is insinuating at, and what Imam al-Ghazali really wants to say. Okay, so مذهب التعليم وغائلته. ثم إني لما فرغت من علم الفلسفة وتحصيله وتفهمه وتزييف ما يزيف منه. So after I finished discussing philosophy and its concept, and all what is related to it, and also after I finished explaining the confusion that is there and the conception that is there, علمت أن ذلك غير واف. When I discuss philosophy in a lengthy way, as I did previously with al-Kalam, in a very intensive way, and told you what is good about philosophy and what is bad about it, and told you also what is good about al-Kalam and what shortcoming comes out of al-Kalam, because he mentioned the problem with al-Kalam that it is too traditional. It dwells a lot on Quran and Sunnah, and not too much of what he calls ad-daruriyat, which is rational thinking, rational aspect of al-Kalam. He said yes. Later on, there were some glimpses of the rational argument in al-Kalam, but that was later. At the beginning, it was all about proving one's position through Quran or Sunnah, which Imam al-Ghazali says that it's a shortcoming from the part of al-Kalam. He himself, being one of the Kalamists, he himself engaged a lot in writing, not only writing, and also having discussion and arguments with people of Bid'ah in his time. So after finishing all this, and after elaborating on all this, علمت أن ذلك أيضا غير واف, that this also is not enough. As he said that ilm al-kalam is not enough. بِكَمَالِ الْغَرَض is not enough to fulfill the goal that I set at the beginning. Okay? وأن العقل ليس مستقلا بالإحاطة بجميع المطالب. And that, that reason alone cannot be independent in surrounding all the requirements of knowledge, all the requirements of certainty. So meaning that reason falls short in engulfing and surrounding all what has to do with knowing. ولا كاشفا للغطاء عن جميع المعضلات. It is not also, reason alone cannot also discover or take away the, غطاء. غطاء is a cover. Cannot reveal the cover of all the problems. وَكَانَ قَدْ نَبَغَتْ. Okay, since philosophy was not enough to show me the way, since reason alone was not enough to do that, وَقَدْ كَانَ نَبَغَتْ نَابِغَةُ التَّعْلِيمِيَّةِ. At the time where I realized and I did exhaustive study on philosophy, and I also wrote a refutation against the philosophers, all these, and before that, the Kalam, and he's got a very brilliant book in Kalam known as al-Iqtisād fil i'tiqād. Understand? And he also wrote a brilliant book, of course, preventing the common people to talk a lot about Kalam. إلجام العوام عن علم الكلام. All these, as Imam al-Ghazali, as if he wanted to say, all this was not enough. And plus this, when we were trying to, elaborate on ilm al-kalam and also philosophy, here came what emerged, the ta'limism. So you have ilm al-kalam that Imam al-Ghazali was dealing with extensively, and then philosophy and the philosophers, dealing with the metaphysics, in particular. Here you have ta'limism. وشاع بين الخلق تحدثهم بمعرفة معنى الأمور من جهة الإمام المعصوم القائم بالحق. So emerged ta'limism, and they became at a time very popular, and everybody started talking a lot about them, and about also them knowing the ma'rifati ma'na al-umur, them talking about the matters only accessible. We can't know things, we can't understand things properly unless through the Imam, al-Imam al-Ma'soom, infallible Imam, al-Qa'im bil-Haq. So that Imam, if you really want to know Haq, so you have to follow this Imam. So this is the key word here Imam al-Ghazali has problem with, following. Imam al-Ghazali say, okay, if you're talking about Imam al-Ma'soom, which you will counter-argue later on, I don't have a problem with Imam al-Ma'soom, infallible Imam, but that Imam is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are not really obliged to follow someone by way of imitation. So this is point number one that we need to understand, from this line. شاع بين الخلق تحدثهم بمعرفة معنى الأمور من جهة الإمام المعصوم القائم بالحق. So Imam al-Ghazali here, yeah, if you're talking about Prophet being infallible, if this is what you mean, Imam, there is no problem at all. My problem, other than Prophet, is not infallible. Understand? And we don't follow people by imitation, and claiming that they're Imam. Imam Ghazali, in a way, wanted to. He was in a way still criticizing taqlid, or traditionalism. Understand? All the battle in Munqidh min al-Dalal. After we read it, you will see that Imam Ghazali was fighting traditionalism, imitation. The abaiya, wajadna alayhi aba'ana. Understand? He was, in a way, Imam Ghazali was revolutionary in that aspect. Okay, he was radical in that aspect. And to see that, and also contrast that with what is sometimes said by the so-called academics, it shows clearly that a few really read Imam Ghazali, and if they read Imam Ghazali, they read Imam Ghazali through Orientalist writings, and they don't really read Imam Ghazali's writings. If you want to understand Imam Ghazali, this is how you should do. You should come out there, take his books and read, go line by line and try to understand what Imam Ghazali really what really means. فَعَنَّ لِي أَنْ أَبْحَثَ فِي مَقَالَاتِهِ. So when this particular trend, Ta'limism, became very popular, people start talking about Imam al-Ma'sur, infallible Imam that knows the haqq, that if you want to know, if there is no knowledge, there is no way of knowing unless through the Imam. Here Imam al-Ghazali said, okay, if that is okay, let me do research on the claim and see how valid it is. فَعَنَّ لِي أَنْ أَبْحَثَ فِي مَقَالَاتِهِمْ. And these, of course, urged me to do research and read their writings. لِأَطَّلِعَ عَلَى مَا فِي كِنَانَتِهِمْ, so as to know what they have, what they possess, of course, as knowledge. ثم اتفق أن ورد علي أمر حازم من حضرة الخلاف. At that time, at a time where I was getting ready to do research on them and to go intensively read the works, at that time, the Imam, the Khalifa at the time, which is al-Mustadhhir billah. Mustadhhir billah was at that time the Khalifa. Okay? So the Khalifa at that time in Iraq, of course, commissioned him to write a book on al-Batiniyah, because it was the talk of the town at the time. It was the talk of the town, becoming very popular, having discussions, and along that, of course, there are other controversial criminal acts that they used to do at the time by way of assassination, but we will not talk about that. This is too historic. But what we will concern ourselves with is the intellectual aspect of it. So intellectually speaking, it was the trend, at that time. It's like today, Today, I think atheism is becoming more and more rampant in the Muslim world. It's the talk of the tongue right now, and LGBT and all these are the talk of the tongue, and everybody's talking about it. And we have articles, tens and tens of articles written on LGBTs and atheism, and you have scientism. So these are the talks of the tongue today. Okay. So the top of the tongue at that time was actually ta'limism. Okay, so it was normal for the Khalifa to send for Imam al-Ghazali and ask him to write a book in order to educate the people about ta'limism, because people got confused and they were gaining momentum in the Muslim society at the time. So something needed to be done. And the Khalifa, and this is really good. And I think that our leaders can learn from the caliphates on that. If there is a problem, a specific problem in a society, this is another point. Point number one, we mentioned about the Imam al-Ma'soom, Qa'im al-Haq, that Imam al-Ghazali, is not into followism, if you may call it that way, traditionalism, following imitation. So, all his the battle in this book, al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, if the Dalal, if you may translate it, if you try to look through it, al-Dalal here is traditionalism, imitation. Imitation includes even the philosophers at the time. He was not faced by Ibn Sina's and Farabi's and the likes of Aristotle's and Plato's. On the contrary, he brilliantly did his homework and wrote a brilliant book on the philosopher. First, he wrote them descriptively, yes, descriptively, and expose and elaborate on the statesman, and that's it, without any explanation. And then Tahafut al-Falasifa was actually analyzing. This is the phase where he analyzed the statements and then refute some of the statements that do not really, have very strong ground. So this is what Imam Ghazali did. So this is number one, traditional. And we also, in our days, we should be very courageous enough, to walk out of tradition if it does not really go in line with Islamic principles. Absolutely. We shouldn't be phased. Yeah, we respect our scholars. We respect them a lot. No doubt about it. But if if they make a mistake, we should print it out. We should be, of course, there's a big difference between, being polite when you are, reproaching someone, when you are, in a way, correcting someone's mistake, and between being harsh. These are two different things. People, when you criticize them, they take it personal. Sometimes they take it as lack of akhlaq. No, this has nothing to do with akhlaq. This is the truth, and we should accept it. All due respect to our scholars, we do respect them a lot. When they go astray, we should try to say, okay, this is not okay. This does not really go in line with some principles. And I think that in every discipline, there is a certain principle, a certain set of principles that we have to follow. And there is no discipline without principles. If you go to medicine, you have principles. If you go to human sciences, they have their own principles. Okay, in Islam, everyone just wants to jump in and just discuss matters related to Islam without taking into consideration all the principles. Yeah, and if you wish or hope to discuss and criticize, then they have a problem. There is no problem. I need to see where you come from. Exactly as Imam Ghazali did. He did not criticize the philosopher because of criticism, because of, lack of, showing other people's errors. No, he did it out of necessity. And first, he present the statements in a separate, brilliant thesis known as Maqasid al-Falasifa, and then later on refuted, their statements and yeah. So this is what ulama need to do. Nowadays, you feel that academia is all about probably, I would say, rather promotion rather than really solving problem on the ground, rather than really addressing issues, pressing issues in the societies. Ulama are supposed to protect people's minds. Doctors are protecting the physical aspects. The ulama and thinkers and philosophers also, their job is to protect people from poisonous ideas and poisonous principles and beliefs. And this is exactly what Imam Ghazali was doing. And he was supported by the Caliph, by the Al-Khalifa at the time. So ثم اتفق أن ورد علي أمر جازم من حضرة الخلافة. So, and this coincided with the Khalifa at that time sending me an instruction, بتصنيف كتاب, instruction to write a book, يكشف عن حقيقة مذهبه, a book that identifies the reality and the truth of their school of thought. Yeah, it was trending at the time. It was trending, and someone needed to address that, and Imam al-Ghazali wanted to address that, and the responsible Khalifa at the time also felt the same thing, that this need to be addressed. فَلَمْ يَسَعُنِي مُدَافَعَتُهُ. When the instruction came to me, I couldn't say no. I couldn't push it back. Couldn't refuse. فَلَمْ يَسَعُنِي مُدَافَعَتُهُ وَصَارَ ذَلِكَ مُسْتَحَثًّا. On the contrary, it has become urgency. I found it urgent. مِنْ خَارِج, coming from outside. ضَمِيمًا لِلْبَاعِثِ مِنَ الْبَاطِلِ. It has become urgency coming from outside, coinciding with confining with internal motivation that I have. Meaning, when the Caliph sent me the instruction, I couldn't refuse it. Why? Because number one, this is an instruction coming outside, coming from somewhere, that coincides, that go hand in hand with a motivation and some internal motivation of me. So because I was planning to do that, I saw that now. فابتدأت بطلب كتبهم وجميع مقالاتهم. So I started collecting the books and their writings here and there. وكان قد بلغني بعض كلماتهم المستحثة التي ولدتها خواطر أهل العصر. Before I collect all the books and writings, some of the vocabulary, some of the wording came to me, because they were trending at a time. Not only trending, but also the ideas and also vocabulary, all the set of vocabulary related to them was also trending at a time. So it came to me at a time before I did data collection, before I did all that, before I did literature review and got to know what kinds of book they have and who are the scholars, what they wrote, what the ideas. Some of the vocabulary was at the time trending, So now, ولدتها خواتر أهل العصر لا على المنهاج المعهود من سلفهم. Okay. فجمعت تلك الكلمات, and what I did, I brought together all these vocabulary, lexic. I had a lexic on my own, and I categorized the vocabulary, categorized the vocabulary, the lexicon of the madhab, of the school of thought of Talimism, and I put them into order. وَرَتَّبْتُهَا تَرْتِيبًا مُحْكَمًا, and I ordered them in a very, orderly manner. مُقَارِنًا لِلتَّحْقِيقِ, okay, so as to make comparison easy. وَاسْتَوْفَيْتُ الْجَوَابَ عَنْهَا, so I enumerated the vocabulary because language is very important. So I pick up the vocabulary, keywords here and there. Yeah, kalimat here will be better translated into keywords. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, keywords. So I picked up the keywords here and there, and I, enumerated the keywords, and I organized it in a very nice way, in a very orderly manner, so as to make comparison easy. Then once I'm done with that, استوفيت الجواب عنه. I took every single keyword and tried to write about it and try to answer it, because these keywords are in a way questions, right? When we do research, we have research questions. So Imam al-Ghazali, in a way, collected all these main topics, the keywords, and studied the keywords very thoroughly, and organized the keywords, in a very orderly manner, and then explained them very well, and then now try to answer or refute. واستوفيت الجواب عنها حتى أنكر بعض أهل الحق مبالغتي في تقرير حجتهم. Subhanallah. Look at how objective Imam al-Ghazali is. This is point number 3 that we can learn from this. Imam al-Ghazali, he did that so much so. Look at the objectivity here. The objectivity comes or stems from the fact that Imam al-Ghazali, he collected the data, he collected the keywords, he collected what they have said, the statement, whatever. He did his literature review, he did his homework very exhaustively, to the extent, and he also, not only did he mention the statement and the keywords and explain them like this, but what he did more than that. He backed it up with their own evidence, because they have the evidence. Imam al-Ghazali, okay, this is what they say, so this is their evidence. They stem from this evidence. They depend on this evidence saying this. For example, Imam al-Ma'asum, where did it come from this? Where did this come from? Al-Ta'lim, where does it come from? Imam al-Ghazali will bring evidence from the Quran and Sunnah showing you that this is where this statement comes from. They said this because of this. So much so that scholars around Imam al-Ghazali and others started to, in a way, reproach Imam al-Ghazali. See, what are you doing? What are you doing? On the contrary, as if you were defending them, because this is taqreer hujjatihim. Probably themselves were not able to do that brilliantly and eloquently and thoroughly as Imam al-Ghazali did. Absolutely. The way he presented, the statement and then the evidence backing up these statements. Amazing. They themselves couldn't have dreamed doing such thing. It was brilliant, so much so that, some scholars, Ahlul Haq, of course, some scholars, thought that Imam al-Ghazali exaggerated in doing that, meaning he did it in a more elaborate, extensive way, to the far of even argumenting for their sake, bringing, backing up their statement with evidence. So, so people start questioning why you should do that. So, حتى أنكر بعض أهل الحق مبالغتي في تقرير حجتهم فقال هذا سعي لهم فإنهم كانوا يعجزون عن نصرة مذهبهم بمثل هذه الشبهات لولا تحقيقك لها وترتيبك إياها. You see? So, some of these scholars were not happy with Imam al-Ghazali. On the contrary, they reproached him by saying, you have gone far, backing the statement with evidence and, putting some sort of argument and logic into what they say. فقال, this is what they say actually. Where Imam al-Ghazali knew this, some people were not happy by this because they said this. What did they say? They say, هذا سعي الله. You are really you are really in a way doing this for their sake. This is in their favor. You are really, laboring, for their sake. You are working very hard for their sake. فإنهم كانوا يعجزون عن نصرة مذهبهم. They were not able to defend their own school of thought. They were not able to eloquently and thoroughly defend their own ideas and all their own beliefs and principles. بمثل هذه الشبهات لولا تحقيق لها. Had not been because of your work, your thorough study about their ideas and principles, themselves wouldn't have been able to do that as thoroughly and eloquently as you did. وَتَرْتِيبُكَ لَإِيَّاهَا. And the way you organize everything, you categorize, the keywords and the statement into groups and backing them up with, Imam al-Ghazali, subhanallah, when you read Imam al-Ghazali as if, this is point number 4, as if, you have in front of you an emeritus professor, if I may call it, knowing everything that is going on in academia today. Imam Ghazali is a master of organization. He's a master of, if you read Imam Ghazali, any book that you pick about Imam Ghazali to read, you will see all the components related to research. You will see, for example, problem statement. You will see objectives. You will see literature review. You will see everything. You will see questions, research questions. You will see everything pertaining to research at his time. Subhanallah. And this is an example of that. Okay, there is a problem in the society, which is the emergence of Ta'limism, and they're becoming very apparent. And they were disseminating the principles and ideas, and there was confusion in the Muslim community at the time in Iraq and other parts of as well, because as we said, Khalifatul Muntasir al-Fatimi, the Fatimid Caliph, was so adamant in a way in propagating Batiniya, even though himself was not a Batini. He was an Ismaili, even unless if we say that Ismaili, some people argue that Ismaili and Batiniya are two, meaning two sides of the same coin. But of course, there are some differences, no doubt about it. So they had he had a problem with that caliph, and so he sent the Batiniyas there to, in a way, to make confusion in the Muslim community at that time. So the problem was there, regardless of the historical, what I would say, the historical the historical reasons why the Batinites were so active in the Muslim communities. This is something else. But the fact that they were there, absolutely, they were so active, so dynamic in disseminating and propagating the views and principles and all this stuff. So there was a problem in the Muslim community. Okay, so Imam al-Ghazali saw the problem. The problem was rampant. The problem was apparent. The problem was ubiquitous everywhere in the Muslim, communities. So he wanted to address that problem. Understand? So there is a problem. Okay, and Imam al-Ghazali stated the problem. And number two, of course, the Caliph also wanted him also to write a book about that. So he got motivated more. Got motivated because it came from within and from without. And then immediately what Imam al-Ghazali did, he started collecting data, literature review, seeing where is the problem. And look, Imam al-Ghazali was so particular not about the historical aspects of it, because here you wouldn't find historical facts about the Talimiyah. He was so particular about the principles, about the thoughts, the ideas that were so rampant, that were so apparent at the time. Subhanallah, Imam al-Ghazali is teaching us academia how to write a research paper. Amazing. So, and not only this, the objectivity he showed in presenting the statements, and not only that, and putting it in a very orderly, organized, and manner, and in a very argumentative way, because they did not have an argument, they did not know, themselves couldn't really defend their own ideas and principle as Imam Ghazali did. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Okay, Imam Ghazali said that, okay, the one that reproached me, that criticized me, that, and they were not happy, the ulama, the ulama as-sunnah, they said Ahlul Haq. Ahlul Haq mean they were not those of Muqtadi'ah. The scholars that people, the trustworthy scholars that people trusted at that time. There were many scholars at that time, at the time of Imam Ghazali. His contemporaries, very brilliant ulama at the time. So they were not happy with what Imam Ghazali did. Said, on the contrary, are you defending them, or you're really addressing the issue at hand? So they were asking a question. But Imam Ghazali said, okay, not a problem. هذا الإنكار من وجه حق. Okay, this take on me, and this particular take on me is true. Yeah, why not? Because what am I doing? So writing a book, and in that manner, and even the way he wrote the book is not only accumulating ideas and statements, but argumenting for the book, presenting the book with evidence, in a very orderly manner. This is amazing. He said, okay, this is true. Somehow, just for the sake of argument, I do agree with you partly, but not fully, of course, because we will see that. And he said, okay, well taken, yeah. Your reproach is well taken. Your criticism is well taken. Why? فقد أنكر أحمد بن حنبل على الحارث المحاسبي رحمهما الله تصنيفه في الرد على المعتزلة. Previously, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala took on Al-Harith al-Muhasibi at his time, at Ahmad's time, He was also a great scholar, a contemporary of Imam Ahmad, a great scholar, who wrote a very brilliant book on refuting the Mu'tazilites. So Imam Ahmad at the time was not happy, and he criticized that move. He said that move was not a smart move. Why? Because by doing that, you will make their ideas and principles and beliefs, apparent to people. You will make it, accessible to people. Because sometimes, even today, some ideas, contemporary ideas and thought that we have, from the West, empiricism and all these ideas, until today, they seem not really clear to many people, especially, the common people. Even, to be honest with you, even some students, these ideas seem not really apparent. Empiricism. Imagine today someone like Imam al-Ghazali comes in and make the ideas very clear and disseminated even among the common people. Everybody could understand what empiricism is. Everybody can understand, for example, what secularism is, what democracy is. So all these are keywords that we have today. All these are circulating in our communities, and people sometimes do not really make sense of it. Understand? Like secularism. Secularism is a very confusing term until today. Until at least al-Masiri came and gave a very comprehensive definition of secularism. Long before Imam al-Ghazali, secularism was so confusing because we used to see secularism as separation of religion from state, which al-Masiri deemed as what? As monistic. Yeah, he deemed it as monistic. It does not really tell you the real truth, So that's why he came up with the idea of comprehensive secularism. That secularism is more than that. Secularism is a manifestation of what, to put it very simply, a manifestation of dehumanization. This is what it's all about, and desecularization. This is what secularism is all about, is to dehumanize us. And then you have Darwinism, you have all these ideas. So you see, these ideas are not clear to us until today. To be honest with you, even many students have problem understanding these concepts. Imam Ghazali, this is exactly what he did. These are the keywords, these are the ideas. Ta'lim. What is ta'lim? Because when you hear the word ta'lim, it's so confusing. Ta'lim is something good. Allama yu'allimu ta'lim is to teach, is to educate. It's something good. And even our ministries are called ministries of education, wazarat al-ta'lim. So something good, something positive. Why Imam al-Ghazali had a problem with it? Imam al-Ghazali, looked deeply into the word, the epistemological underpinnings of the word. So he broke the word down into pieces and said, no, ta'limi is not, this is not as innocent as you may think. Ta'limi here means that the only one that has the authority to teach and to educate and to make ahkam and rulings is the Imam al-Ma'soom. And that Imam al-Ma'soom, since the Prophet is not there, it has to be someone, understand? Which goes against the idea of nubuwah, So, Imam al-Ghazali actually was ahead of his time, subhanAllah. So Ahmad also was not happy with al-Muhasibi when he wrote a book, a very brilliant book, refuting the Mu'tazilites. And Mu'tazilites at the time was trending, at Imam Ahmad's time was trending. And we all know about the fitna, right? The fitna of Khalq al-Quran, okay, whereby Imam Ahmad was what they call was in a way forced to stay at home, for a long period of time, because he refused to say that Quran is makhluk. And that fitna is well known, is documented in history, and you can read about it. So he was not happy by al-Muhasibi. How can you write a book refuting the Mu'tazilites? This way, as if Imam Ahmad wanted to say, when you do that, you are making the ideas accessible to people. You are making what is hidden, what many people even don't know, because when you write about them, you will mention the adilla, the evidence, and then you refute them. Because if you want to counter-argue someone's statement, you bring what they say, and you bring also the evidence, why they said what they said. This is very important. So you bring the evidence, the argument, and then you refute. Then if you have something to comment, this is what academia is all about. So you discuss the ideas, you analyze it, you bring the evidence, and then you refute it. So by this way, you are making the ideas accessible to people, because when they read it, they may get confused and they may accept it. Yeah. Now, so فقال الحارث. Harith replied to Ahmad ibn Hanbal when he, raised that issue. He said, الرد على المحتاج إليه. Okay. وكذا الصراف الناقد البسيط. No, I'm sorry. What am I? Am I going forward or going backward? I don't know. Okay, sorry. Okay, so he said, "Ar-raddu al-bid'ati fard." So this is what Muhasibi said. He said that Mu'tazilism is an innovation in religion. It's something new. Understand? It's an innovation. It's bid'ah, because it goes against the tradition at the time. It goes against the tradition of the ulama at the time, and most of the principles and aqidah that was there. You have the Ahl Sunnah, the aqidah of Ahl Sunnah, which was the common, the traditional, at the time. And when Mu'tazilism came in, then there was a problem, because some of the ideas, especially related to the attributes of God, is problematic. Some people even call them mu'attila, meaning that they are canceling God's attributes, some of the God's attributes, like the ilm and all this stuff. They say that Allah is not alim, and so on and so forth. How can you have ilm without being alim? So this is problematic. How can you have knowledge without being knowledgeable? So, so by that, I think that by consensus among the Sunnah, the Ahlul Sunnah, that the Mu'tazilites are Ahlul Bid'ah. They are not kuffar, they are not fusaq, they are not zanadiqa, they are not none of this. They are mubtadi'een. They are just innovators in matters related to aqidah. So al-Muhasibi replied to Imam Ahmad was very simple. Ar-raddu ala al-bid'ati fard. So refuting something that is bid'ah, something that is innovation in religion, is fard. Is an obligation actually. فقال Ahmad. Then Ahmad, stated, replied also, or added to what he said before. Naam. Okay. Yes, that is true. Ar-raddu ala al-bid'ati fard. This statement, there is no problem with that. True. You're right. ولكن حكيت شبهتهم أولا. You have brought up the shubha. Shubha is the misgiving, their misgivings, their confusion, their bid'ah. This is what you you present it first, because when you want to argue something, when you want to do a study of something, you have to objectively present that thing first. The statements, you said this is what they've said. So by saying that, you are exposing the ideas to people. You understand? Especially to the common people. أولا ثم أجبت عنها فيما تأمن أن يطالع الشبهة من يعلق ذلك بفهمه ولا يلتفت إلى الجواب أو ينظر في الجواب ولا يفهم كنها. Very brilliant. This is a very valid point by Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad, yes. ولكن حكيت شبهتهم. You brought up first the confusion, and then you discussed the confusion and you refuted the confusion, their misgivings. How do you how do you become sure that someone who is not knowledgeable enough, and you طالع الشبهة, get to see the shubha, the confusion, the misgivings, and some of the misgiving, get stuck in that person understanding. Understand? ولا يلتفت إلى الجواب. They may look into the shubha, to the statements of what the Mu'tazilites, forgetting about the refutation. They may just read the statement. When they read the statement of the Mu'tazilites, of course, they may get convinced by some of the arguments made by the Mu'tazilites. Understand? أو ينظر في الجواب. They may also look into the refutation to the argument that you made, ولا يفهم كنهه, but fail to understand it. They may not have the intellectual capacity that help them understand even your argument and your refutation against the Mu'tazilites. You see, so this is what Imam Ghazali brought. He said no. In nutshell here, Imam Ghazali, in his time also, when he wrote this book, he was approached by very sincere, trustworthy scholars at his time, from Al-Sunnah al-Jama'ah, and they were not so happy because they thought that by writing a brilliant book like this, and by presenting brilliantly also the arguments and evidence to everyone, so in a way you are making the ideas public and popular more. This is the argument, and this is fair enough. And in order to make that, he said this is fair. Imam Ghazali himself said, yeah, fair enough. And he brought Imam Ahmad and Muhasibi case. That Muhasibi also did the same with the Mu'tazilites, where he wrote a brilliant book exposing the ideas and all this stuff. And Imam Ahmad was not happy at that time. And he said that, okay, by doing that, you are just propagating their confusion among people, their misgivings among people. Understand? Their poisonous ideas among people. How do you know that those who are reading have the intellectual capacity to read and and differentiate what is bad and what is good? You may only read the misgivings part and not read the refutation that you wrote, or they may even read the whole book but fail to have a grasp of it, to understand it fully. Then they will be confused. They will have some of the ideas in their mind. It's like today, exactly like today. And you can see sometimes academics and scholars very confused about some of the ideas. Absolutely. I'm not even talking about common people. Even at the university level, we're still not sure about some of the ideas because they've not been plainly elaborated, explained to us in a very simple manner. They are not been broken down. Sheikh Ramadan Bhoti, the great sheikh from Syria that passed away like a few years ago, regardless of maybe his political stance, he was a great scholar in a way. He once said that, okay, by the way, he sometimes, when I was in Syria, he sometimes reminded me of Imam Ghazali. Because when you read his books, this is what he does exactly. Bringing the statesman and then present it as if he was one of them, and then refute. He once said that what makes sometimes these poisonous ideas popular is only jargons, it's vocabularies. When you hear the vocabulary, you think that, wow, these are big ideas. But when you break things down into pieces, there's nothing behind it. You're talking about Darwinism. What is it? It shouldn't be that confusing. It shouldn't be that hard. We are not stupid. It's not like a rocket science. It's something that is very easy to understand. But the way academicians or academics discuss Darwinism and all these big ideas, you think that they are big ideas. They're not big ideas. They're just very simple. Imam Ghazali, but it was unfazed, at a time by the trends that were there. He was not, unfazed. He was not fazed by not the philosophers, not the Batinites, not even the Kalamis, not even the Kalamis, which once he considered himself part of the Kalamis. And he's got very brilliant books on Kalam. Yet, because he had problem with traditionalism, that's why he tried to write about all these trends and then see what is true from what is not true, what is valid from what is invalid, what stands ground and what does not. So this is what Imam Ghazali wanted to do. And I think that this is really relevant today, and we students of knowledge in general, researchers, we should have the courage sometimes to question some of some of the statesmen, whether made by Western scholars or our own scholars. Sometimes the problem with us is that we are afraid of our own scholars. You see someone refuting scholars from the West when they go astray from what we believe is true. We refrain from criticizing, our own selves. Our own backyard need to be looked into first. We clean it up and then we move on. So this is what Imam Ghazali was doing. In the Muslim, in the Ummah, you have trends. You have different trends. So what is true and what is not true? This is what he wanted to know. He didn't want to follow all of them and be just someone following blindly, someone imitating. No. That's why all of his writings is based on creativity. Even Imam Ghazali is known as Shafi'i, but he was not literally following blindly. He's got his own ijtihad as far as Shafi'ism is concerned. Even within the same school of thought, he was so revolutionary. This is how he was. And this is what knowledge is all about. This is what academia should look like. Okay, I think we are running a little bit out of time, right? So I don't know. Do we stop here? And let us. Do we need to summarize the ideas, or I think it should be enough, right? Wonderful. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. So do we say Assalamu alaikum, or do we just close the session and read kafara? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.